The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. Another foreign deal on rare earth minerals just signed by President Trump. We'll look at whether it will help weaken China's leverage ahead of President Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping.
We really have no idea what to visualize at the other side of this.
Hurricane Melissa's chokehold on Jamaica. The historic storm now crawling over the island, unleashing lethal winds.
A big chunk of Americans are going to be losing a very, very important benefit.
Food stamps on the line for millions of Americans as the government shutdown continues, and now calls growing louder for Democrats to vote with Republicans to reopen the government. Good evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. Right now, President Trump is getting ready to leave Tokyo and head to South Korea as his diplomacy trip in Asia continues. Today, Trump signed another rare earth minerals deal, this time with the new Prime Minister of Japan, who President Trump spoke highly of.
I just want to say that she is a delight, and I think she's going to be a great Prime Minister.
The rare earths deal is part of the president's effort to reduce America's dependence on China for these critical minerals used for everything from missiles to smartphones. The National News Desk, Atra El-Nashar, has more ahead of Trump's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
President Trump in a race to shore up America's access to rare earth minerals in the face of China's recent moves to withhold its dominant supply from the global economy.
This will be a relationship that will be stronger than ever before.
Signing a framework agreement with Japan's new prime minister Tuesday intended to secure both countries' supply of rare earth minerals, initiate public and private investment in mining and refining, and expedite project permitting. While in Asia this week, President Trump also signing agreements with Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam intended to increase America's access to rare earths. It follows a deal struck with Australia last week.
We'll have so much critical mineral and rare earths that you won't know what to do with them. They'll be worth about $2.
This push comes after China, which has a near monopoly, put global export controls on its rare earth minerals, products containing them, and mineral processing equipment. Some White House officials called it extortion.
I think it's become very clear to everybody that this power grab by the Chinese won't be tolerated.
The U.S. used to manufacture much of its own rare earths, but it's a costly and cumbersome business, so many domestic firms sold their technology to China.
They've also really advanced the technology such that for now, we lost that ability to catch up.
It gives Chinese President Xi Jinping clear leverage ahead of his meeting with President Trump Thursday in South Korea, even though broad export controls are tough to enforce.
But it might disrupt, some of our critical efforts to update our military technology. And so my sense is that it's more of a bargaining ploy.
So what does China want in return? Largely for President Trump to lower tariffs on Chinese products bound for the United States. And Trump has acknowledged sky-high tariffs on China are not sustainable. American and Chinese senior officials just established framework for a trade deal they hope Xi and Trump finalize Thursday. But it will require both leaders, Xi with his minerals blockade and Trump with his tariffs, to lay down their economic arms. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
In Japan today, President Trump said his administration has made major cuts to red tape, paving the way for certain projects.
This includes the upcoming liquefied natural gas pipeline in Alaska, which we have well underway, to export vast amounts of American energy, and Japan is one of the big customers.
President Trump has pushed for the proposed 800-mile Alaska pipeline, which would move gas from Alaska's north across the state for export to Asia. Last month, Japan agreed to explore a new takeoff deal for the Alaska LNG project. Tokyo Gas has since signed a letter of intent with the project's lead developer to offtake gas from the project. In around 4 hours, President Trump is set to arrive in South Korea, where he'll then meet with that country's president. Meanwhile, War Secretary Pete Hegseth also in Japan today on a separate trip to Asia. You can see him here meeting with American service members after a speech at Yokosuka Naval Base. The Pentagon says Hegseth also will visit Malaysia, Vietnam, and South Korea. The Senate held a hearing this afternoon examining the origins of politically motivated violence. The hearing was spurred by the assassination of Charlie Kirk last month. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
During Tuesday's hearing, Republican Senator Eric Schmidt argued the left is responsible for the rise in political violence felt across the country.
They know that their vision would never win at the ballot box, so they've chosen terrorism instead.
Schmidt saying Charlie Kirk's assassination prompted this hearing. Democrats arguing assigning blame to a political side is counterproductive.
To get into an argument about whether it's more left or more right, we kind of lose the point that it's all to be condemned.
A GOP witness, conservative podcaster Michael Knowles, pushed back on that point.
This seems to me confusing and misbegotten, as one cannot solve a problem if one does not know where the problem lies.
But Democrats bringing in Daniel Hodges, a D.C. police officer, to remind the room what happened on January 6, 2021.
I was beaten, bloodied, crushed, with my eye gouged and my skull smashed with my own baton.
In Minnesota, the FBI arrested a man accused of plotting a murder-for-hire scheme targeting Attorney General Pam Bondi, reportedly offering $45,000 for her capture, dead or alive, adding the words preferably dead. In Virginia, Democratic candidate for Attorney General Jay Jones is in hot water for resurfaced text messages from 2022, where he writes about wanting a former Republican colleague to receive 2 bullets to the head and how he hopes the colleague's children die.
It's not only disqualifying, it's bringing down the rest of their ticket.
Democratic candidate for Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger appearing annoyed when asked why she hasn't pulled her endorsement of Jones.
The fact that I have to spend even a moment's time talking about somebody else's text messages from years ago rather than what I want to do as governor is something that I am deeply unhappy about.
And Taylor, an analysis published in September by CSIS notes 2025 marks the first time in more than 30 years that left-wing attacks outnumber those on the far right.
And Kayla, a new poll came out last week from Pew Research Center gauging how Americans feel about political violence. So what did the pollsters find?
Yeah, so they found that 85% of respondents believe politically motivated violence is on the rise. Both parties appear to share the same concern. 86% of Republicans polled said political violence is heading upwards, and 85% of Democrats said the same thing. But here's where the two parties split, Taylor. 77% of Republicans said left-wing extremism was a major problem, while among Democrats, 76% said right-wing extremism is a major problem. So you can see both parties agree on the issues but disagree on the root cause.
In Washington, D.C., Kayla Gaskins, thank you. The transgender partner of Charlie Kirk's suspected assassin is nowhere to be found, according to the New York Post. The outlet reports 22-year-old Lance Twiggs seems to have disappeared from his hometown in Utah. He was previously said to have been cooperating with authorities. This comes as suspected killer Tyler Robinson is in custody awaiting trial. Live right now in Kingston, Jamaica, where Hurricane Melissa has made landfall as a Category 5 storm, but downgrading to a Category 4 within the last few hours. Wind speeds as high as 185 miles an hour. Melissa is officially one of the most powerful hurricane landfalls on record, in the Atlantic Basin. Now, Melissa made landfall in southwestern Jamaica near New Hope. Forecasters warn catastrophic winds are likely near the path of Melissa's center. The rest of the island could see devastating flash flooding and landslides. Meanwhile, officials in Jamaica say they've done everything they can do to prepare and are bracing for the worst.
There will be flooding and there will be infrastructure damage. We have 70% of our population living within 5 kilometers of the sea in generally low-lying areas, so the risk of flood is extreme.
Melissa has been blamed for at least 7 deaths, at least 3 people killed in the storm in Haiti over the weekend. In the Dominican Republic, 1 person has died, another person remains missing. And Melissa's path will carry on to Cuba next. A new test for the tenuous U.S.-brokered ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders immediate, powerful strikes in Gaza. The Associated Press reporting that witnesses have already started hearing tank fire and seeing explosions in various parts of the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Hamas is delaying the handover of a hostage's body due to what they say are Israel's violations. Earlier today, Netanyahu's office said that Hamas is in clear violation of the Gaza ceasefire agreement after they say Hamas returned remains to Israel that did not belong to any of the 13 hostages still unaccounted for in the enclave. Well, a top U.S. Border Patrol official must meet with a judge daily to discuss the Chicago area immigration crackdown. At a hearing today, U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis gave this order to Greg Bavino, the Border Patrol sector chief overseeing the agency's operations in Chicago. Now, it stems from a lawsuit from protesters and reporters claiming agents have used too much force, pointing to certain videos and images that government lawyers have argued are one-sided. The military's targeting of drug cartels is intensifying. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announcing 3 more strikes against boats in the Pacific Ocean. It's the first time multiple strikes happened in one day, with 14 people killed on 4 boats just yesterday. Hegseth said the narcotics traffickers were operating the boats, and there have been 13 known strikes of this kind since September. Taking a look now at some new numbers, over 500,000 people have been deported since President Trump took office again. DHS saying 527,000 illegal aliens have been removed and another 1.6 million have self-deported. Now, the department projects 600,000 removals by year's end. Arrivals at the southwest land border have fallen sharply in the Trump administration. Right now, a manhunt is underway for an inmate who was accidentally let out of a California jail. Officials say 20-year-old Isaiah Andrews of Kent, Washington, was released from the Martinez detention facility. This was last Wednesday. Now, Andrews was being held on charges related to a police chase and was wanted on an arrest warrant for homicide. Anyone with information is pictured here on your screen should call 911. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing the makers of Tylenol. He claims Johnson & Johnson and Kenvue hid risk related to children's brain development. It comes after President Trump claimed Tylenol used in pregnancy can cause autism. Kenvue vows to fight the lawsuit, which it calls baseless. Johnson & Johnson says it divested years ago and has no liability for Tylenol. Coming up, more federal workers go without pay and critical benefits for millions of Americans days from running dry. We've got the latest on the deadlock from Capitol Hill as calls grow louder to end the government shutdown. Then the scathing new report on former President Joe Biden's autopen use that is now urging further investigation by the Justice Department. What the report found and what happens next. And what caused tornado warning sirens to malfunction during severe weather in a Texas town last week, and what the city said about the failure. We're back in 90 seconds. The Trump administration is blocked indefinitely from firing federal employees during the government shutdown. A federal judge in San Francisco extended her previous ruling, halting the firings while legal challenges play out. The Trump administration sent layoff notices to about 4,000 workers earlier this month. And unions representing federal workers argue the cuts are illegal. Now, this comes along with new pressure on lawmakers to end what is now the second longest shutdown on record. The National News Desk, Matt Gelka, has the latest.
Air traffic controllers were set to miss their first full paychecks of the government shutdown as it dragged on into week 4. They spent Tuesday handing out flyers to travelers on how the shutdown impacts staffing and safety.
Low staffing, unreliable equipment, and then you strip away their pay and say continue going to your job every day and move 3 million passengers and 45,000 flights. It's completely unacceptable. The frustration level is at an all-time high. The anger is at level 10.
Let's have a bill that pays them for the work they do. And Democrats said no to that.
It's another pressure point on lawmakers who haven't shown a willingness to budge. Democrats are still holding out for guarantees on health care subsidies. Republicans want a clean funding bill that reopens the government without additional spending. The country's largest federal workers union called on Democrats to do what they have said they would not: vote with Republicans for their bill to reopen the government. Democrats didn't seem swayed. The Senate took a 13th vote on the clean funding bill Tuesday. That failed again.
Americans know when it comes to health care, when Republicans say later, they mean never.
Food banks are bracing for the worst, as more than 40 million Americans could see their SNAP benefits frozen on November 1st because of the shutdown. Vice President J.D. Vance met with Republicans Tuesday as the GOP maintains there's not much else they can do to get Democrats to come to the table, including getting President Trump involved.
The president tried his best to negotiate with the Democrat leaders. They effectively gave him the middle finger in the overall. So he said he did his best.
Democrats have already blocked attempts to provide pay to essential federal workers, including air traffic controllers and the military, instead opting to support a bill that pays all federal workers. Now, Republicans are reportedly backing a plan to do just that, which could put even more pressure on Democrats to come to the table. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
And this afternoon, Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters that U.S. military service members will get their paychecks by the end of the week, but he did not detail how the Trump administration plans to reallocate funds to pay troops on Friday. Well, Americans are feeling a little less optimistic about their future financial prospects lately. This is according to the latest Conference Board report. The Consumer's Confidence Index dropped by 1 point from September to October to 94.6. That being said, people's views of their current economic situation increased by nearly 2 points. Private sector hiring is increasing, according to ADP. Around 57,000 new jobs were created during the 4 weeks ending October 11th. Now, it's a comeback from September when available private sector jobs declined by around 32,000. The ADP numbers don't always correspond with the job report from the government, but they can be used to track overall patterns. Amazon will cut around 14,000 corporate jobs as the company invests more in artificial intelligence. That's about 4% of its corporate workforce. People affected by the cuts are being notified today, and this comes as the retail giant plans to invest $10 billion in cloud computing and AI infrastructure at a North Carolina campus. Well, ChatGPT users will soon have the option to make purchases through the AI chatbot using PayPal. Today, PayPal announced a deal with OpenAI for its digital payment wallet to be embedded into ChatGPT. The move will also allow PayPal's network of merchants to sell their products within the platform and make products more discoverable. It's going to roll out next year. The NBA is reviewing policies following gambling-related arrest, while Congress wants answers, starting with requesting a briefing from NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. In a memo obtained by the Associated Press, the league's legal department is reviewing how the NBA can protect its integrity as sports betting spreads in the U.S. Now, meanwhile, the Senate Commerce Committee wants information on how the league investigated these gambling allegations, as well as steps it's taking to maintain public trust. The NBA commissioner has until November 10th to respond. The pardon of Hunter Biden by his father, former President Joe Biden, of course, is just one of hundreds at the center of an investigation by the GOP-led House Oversight Committee, which argues in a brand new report, President Biden's cognitive decline combined with his use of the autopen warrants a second look by the Justice Department. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell with the findings.
The issue has ranked high on the current presidential priority list.
The autopen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years.
Donald Trump even releasing a presidential portrait of his predecessor, depicting an autopen instead of President Biden's face, as the GOP-led House Oversight Committee has spent the last several months investigating. They've just released this report entitled The Biden Autopen Presidency: Decline, Delusion, and Deception in the White House. Also making public more than a dozen interviews with top Biden officials and his doctor.
Were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer.
At the center of the investigations, questions about who was actually making key policy decisions, including executive orders and pardons. Republican lawmakers asserting as President Biden declined, his staff abused the autopen and a lax chain of command policy to effect executive actions that lack any documentation of whether they were in fact authorized. Also questioning President Biden's chief of staff, Jeff Zients, on the matter.
Can you read your response?
I approve the use of the autopen for the execution of all the following pardons. Thanks, Jay-Z.
Did you yourself write this email?
I do not believe I did.
Who did?
Rosa.
Responses like this leading them to ask the Justice Department to look into whether executive actions and pardons signed by the autopen should be deemed invalid, despite President Biden telling the New York Times in July that when it came to clemency decisions, he made every single one, adding the autopen was used to sign the warrants because there were a lot of them. Democrats on the committee called the investigation a sham and released their own report, insisting Republicans failed to produce any evidence of wrongdoing, saying while House Republicans obsess about President Biden's health, they're ripping away health care from 17 million Americans. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
Coming up, you've heard of a 4-day work week. Well, now a Utah county is considering a 4-day school week. The problems leaders think it might solve right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start with the failure of tornado warning signs during a storm in Texas.
I hope that these hiccups are a jolt.
Hays County Judge Ruben Becerra was critical of the city of San Marcos after a server malfunction may have caused warning sirens not to activate in the middle of a weather event over the weekend.
It is of great concern when all that work doesn't work when you need it. It's like that phrase, you can always count on them until you need them.
On Friday night, the city of San Marcos was on the edge of a tornado warning that began in Blanco County. In a post on Facebook, the city says it understands how important it is for the community to feel confident that these systems work during emergencies.
I'd say my level of concern would be heightened if a warning system that was supposed to go off didn't.
you know.
A tornado didn't enter San Marcos, but Texas State student Deanna Thompson says, what if?
What if the tornado did come to San Marcos? That could be disastrous.
We can move past it as long as we fix it the next time.
Late Monday morning, the city shared an update that the warning system was back working as intended.
We've been recently facing some setbacks with our tax increase proposal that was denied by the state.
Iron County School District is looking into the possibility of a 4-day school week.
Why is a 4-day school week being considered?
Right now, it's just being explored.
This at the request of Board President Ben Johnson.
The board president just wanted to see if maybe going to a 4-day week would be a money savings option for the school district.
After a tax increase and 2 bond measures failed, the district says a shorter week may also help with attendance.
We're dealing with a lot of attendance issues on Friday, and so we wanted to explore if eliminating just that partial day might help with attendance, might help with student morale, might help with teacher morale. It would cut down transportation. Just that one day taking students back and forth to school could save us about $300,000.
Coming up, an oddly shaped object in a satellite image now defies explanation. The discovery sparking a new Amelia Earhart expedition. Whatever happened to Amelia Earhart? It is the line of a hit song from the 90s, and the question riddled with speculation for generations. And now, an oddly shaped object in the South Pacific has sparked the latest push to solve one of the greatest mysteries of all time, but we may have to wait a little bit longer for some answers. So in 2020, a U.S. Navy veteran was scrolling through satellite images of a tiny island halfway between Australia and Hawaii when he spotted an elongated object in a lagoon. He thought it resembled an aircraft wing, and then with this finding, researchers hopped on board and planned to venture out to that island to investigate the objects in hopes of finding ties to Earhart. But a wrench in those plans, a lengthy permitting process, and approaching cyclone season now means the expedition has to be delayed until next year. All right, that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening as we continue to track Hurricane Melissa as it eyes another island nation. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.